Welcome back to Currents Up Close, and a program on education in the Cedar Falls Community School District, and of course reintroduce Superintendent Andy Pattee and Director of Business Affairs Doug Nefsker. Been talking about school finance the first half and how these things all come together from the state level and taxing authority and per pupil figures and enrollment, and all that comes down to the kinds of things that we're going to talk about the second half of. How really is that divided up? So, Doug, I think we have a pie chart here, and let's talk a little bit about that on the general fund expenditures. We talked in the first half about generating the revenue, and now let's talk a little bit about expenditures and how that is determined.
Thank you. We briefly touched about this in the first half of the show today. Typically, an Iowa school district is very heavily labor intensive. That's not unique across the entire country. And you can see for Cedar Falls for the 2014-15 school year, we were approximately 84% of our total costs were directly tied to salary and benefits. Not unusual. Most school districts are in that 80 to 85% range, so Cedar Falls is pretty typical for a school district in the state of Iowa. And you'll see the other parts of the pie graph over there on the right. The AEA flow-through, that is dollars that flow through the Cedar Falls School District directly to our local area education agency. All school districts across the state of Iowa are required to do that, and so that's just a part of it. You build that into your budget, but we actually never are able to use those dollars. Supplies are pretty much self-explanatory, as well as equipment and miscellaneous. And then the purchase services, that's sort of a ambiguous type category, and we basically are using that for tuition, nursing services, printing technology, and we do have a very small amount of non-public services. By legislative statute, we're required to reimburse the non-publics for a small amount for textbooks, for transportation to and from school, and those sorts of things. So in a big piece of the puzzle, you can kind of see where our dollars all go.
And really, when you look at the enrollment increase compared to the enrollment decline, as you mentioned earlier in the program, if there's a significant drop in enrollment, then you have to get that budget to fit, and you're going to turn to those 84% of personnel costs to one degree or another, because you can only do so much with that 16%. So as you grow then, as you increase enrollment, you again have to say, how many staff are we going to need for this this increase in enrollment? And it won't come for another year, probably. So that really is the importance of your planning in ahead.
So crucial, because funding is always 1 year in arrears. So our certified enrollment that just took place October 1st of this year, we won't see the funding for those 144 additional students until next year. So the planning component is so extremely important. So we know what the supplemental state aid is. We know what that percentage is. That's supposed to be set a full calendar year in advance. In recent years, that's been set usually in the spring of the current year, which always puts us behind the planning process to ensure that we're providing the right programs, having the right staff in place to ensure that we're serving our kids at that excellence range that we expect in Cedar Falls. Back to your question, that's so crucial. If you are losing students, there's really one big part of the pie that you always have to go back and look at, and that's staff. If you're growing students, then you continue to have to look at that staff to find out, are you having the right programs, the right class size ratios as you add staff. And in Cedar Falls, we added 3 new teachers this year in August due to our growing enrollment, which is a great challenge, but then it also goes back to space and making sure you have the right facilities.
Right.